Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in, welcome on, welcome back to another YouTube exclusive episode of the Direct Podcast. Today, we'll be breaking down the breaking news of Kyle Chandler being cast as Hal Jordan in the new DCU's upcoming Lanterns series that
Yeah.
features the Green Lanterns by Darkest Day and Brightest Night. I'm your host, Matt Ricky, and I'm joined as always by my friend, co-host, box office correspondent, Mr. David Thompson. David, Tuesday. How we doing?
Doing well. We finally made it, man. The DCU is assembling.
Hey,
Lanterns is firing up. A part of this report was that it's supposed to start filming in January to June in Atlanta, apparently. So it's pretty awesome. So much positivity and just juice behind this series specifically. So it was really exciting to finally get this, casting announcement. It was kind of an interesting moment when it was reported how Josh Brolin, passed on the role. But they were clearly in the heat of the midst of, casting and auditions because it wasn't soon after, we got Kyle Chandler taking the role as Hal Jordan, which, I think there's going to be a lot of mixed opinions about this, right?
yeah, I think that Kyle Chandler's one of those guys. Like, he is an all-time recognize him, don't know his name kind of guy for me. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
he is so
Absolutely.
much more Coach Taylor than he is Kyle Chandler. And for those who don't know, for those who maybe haven't seen the show, the series Friday Night Lights is based on Coach Taylor, and obviously the book turned movie turned series, like one of the best, you know, books to film slash TV adaptations we've gotten in our lifetime. The movie's a hit, the show's a hit. It's one of those things, and he is the coach in Friday Night Lights, another Michael B. Jordan joint, which is I always
Yeah.
laugh when I go back and see a young Michael B. and a young Jesse Palmer as well,
Right.
which
That's
is
so
which is
funny.
a fun one.
Yeah.
But Kyle Chandler, Hal Jordan, Green Lantern overall, right? This is one of those. I feel, and I could be wrong. I feel like I have a good pulse on the general public view of comic book movies and comic books in general. Green Lantern, much like Kyle Chandler, I know what it is. I don't know anything about it,
Mm.
and I feel like a lot of people are going to feel this way. That's why I think personally, having this be an HBO series, having this be something that they are adding a like core member of the Justice League onto HBO as a series to kind of establish who warrants a movie, who warrants a show, and thinning that line as much as possible because Green Lantern is a big deal. We've never gotten a Green Lantern movie since Ryan Reynolds' 2011 infamous flop.
Yeah.
So having it as a series, I think, is a smart move. Budget concerns, obviously, with how much CGI is going to be involved, but I think Kyle Chandler is a good start for this reason, and this reason only. He is one of those almost blank slate actors. I've seen him be funny. I've seen him be dramatic. I've seen him in bad movies. I've seen him in good movies. There's a full spectrum of Kyle Chandler I've seen. And I'm excited to see which pieces they pull out for this character. As far as Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan goes, David, do
Yeah.
you think that this is impactful enough of a move, or do you think this could be like a secondary breakout kind of situation for Kyle Chandler?
It's interesting because I mean, huge opportunity, I would say, for Kyle Chandler, especially in terms of like his recent work. I recognized him most recently in the Godzilla movies.
Awful.
Yeah, whatever. And then also, where also I was looking at his like IMDb, was in Wolf of Wall Street.
Yes.
What he's the
Agent
FBI
Denim,
guy.
baby. Yes.
I'm like,
Fun
yeah,
coupons. Fun
yeah.
coupons
I
are
love him in
best. He's
that like one
incredible in that
scene.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was funny. One of the first thing that popped in my head, and then I was looking at the IMDb. I'm like, oh, that's right. Like that was perfect. It's interesting, man. Like, so here's the thing about this series, just to kind of cover it here on the show. Chris Mundy from Ozark, Damon Lindelof, we know him. Watchmen, Lost. And then Tom King. They're the three showrunners on this show. It's an HBO series straight up from the very beginning, from production. This is going to be an HBO series. All that sounds awesome, right? And then you take that core group. That is a bit of a dream team, I would say, for TV and for DC fans. Then you add that in HBO, and this is how the Hollywood Reporter kind of described the show. This is going to sound very similar to many people, but I think it's really important. Lanterns is described as having a gritty, true detective vibe as it focuses on Jordan reluctantly mentoring a young Lantern, John Stewart, who is one of DC's first black characters ever. John Stewart, which is pretty cool. The story sees the two characters investigating an earthbound murder with larger implications. Sources tell The Hollywood Reporter that DC and the producers are looking for a young, more fresh-faced actor for the role to play opposite an older and bigger name. So I wanted to say all that not only because I think the concept of the show sounds awesome. It means we're gonna get the Green Lantern core first, and then hone in on this Earthbound, investigation. Dope, right? Like
Sick.
maybe not these
Sick.
crazy, we've got the ring and everything, doing these crazy powers and stuff, but we will get some of that. But I like it's more of like these police cops, which is really what they are. I like the idea of Hal Jordan being this older, grizzled, reluctantly mentoring guy. I think that is a choice for sure. I think some fans of DC maybe would have liked to see Hal Jordan be the future Green Lantern, but that seems to be what John Stewart's going to be, right? And Boris Kidd, who wrote this article, he tweeted out how it looks like for Chandler here, it looks like a one series. There's no movie part of the deal, making people speculate already. What happens to Hal Jordan in this show, right? Does he make it, or even if he does quote unquote survive the show or whatever, maybe he doesn't have much of a future. Maybe this is going to be John Stewart's Green Lantern that we maybe see in the future Justice League, or just that we see in general. And also, James Gunn's talked about this. We don't necessarily know when this series takes place in the greater DCU, but we do know that their series and shows and movies, I should say, aren't going to all take place in this steady growing timeline. Like Superman, we expect to be in quote unquote modern day, but other projects we don't know on the timeline when it's supposed to take place. I mean, James Gunn's talked about how it's supposed to be similar in a way, more similar to Star Wars in a sense, where things can be, they could tell stories at way different parts of the timeline. The most obvious one is that Paradise Lost series they're in pre-production on, which is like, the backstory of Wonder Woman and all that, which will obviously be a very, very distant prequel. But regardless, man, I think this sounds great. What sticks out is like, okay, so Kyle Chandler's the quote unquote bigger name, So there's gonna be a lot riding on, in my opinion, the Green Lantern name and the HBO branding, because we're going to get some kid we haven't heard of probably as John Stewart, which sounds pretty awesome, especially if he kills the role and becomes this, he becomes the Green Lantern of this universe. That sounds great. We already, by the way, we already have a Green Lantern that's going to be in Superman. Nathan Fillion, which is like so funny. Like we're just getting the lanterns, man. James Gunn's like, here we go. Like, you wanted Green Lanterns, you're getting them.
Well, and I think that comes, to like what comic book movies are in concept is like these crazy, wacky, for lack of a better term, concepts introduced in these cinematic, quote unquote, grounded ways. And with something like Green Lantern, you have to have the conversation on, do you show what it is first and then work to how we got there? Or do you do what the Ryan Reynolds movie did? Show somebody who has no idea what it is, have him get there until we understand what it is. It's like, do you show it first and then explain, or do you explain as you go and get there? And I love this idea of showing us the Lantern Corps first. We're going to see an established what these Green Lanterns are, and I assume throughout the series we'll kind of get the backstory of what it means to different people, this, that, the other.
Yeah.
Flashback opportunities, stuff like that. And I think that's going to be a really fun way to introduce it, specifically because it's HBO, specifically because it can get as dramatic or as goofy as they want it to be, and it's not going to feel off pitch no matter what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if a Disney Plus show gets too dramatic, we're like, what the hell are we watching? But also, you have things like Andor that are able to balance that line really well.
Yeah.
And as far as, the promotion with Kyle Chandler and everything, I think that it's such an opportunity to basically put over whoever this John Stewart character is going to be. It feels like a buddy cop movie where the older cop is going to, put over the younger cop and flush him forward. What I'm excited about, and the thing that I think for the first time it clicked for me, this is a brand new blank slate comic book movie universe.
Yeah.
Something we haven't gotten in forever. And it's just
Just now
so
clicked for you.
exciting. No, no, well, it just now clicked for me in the sense of like, is Hal Jordan going to show up in a future project? We don't
Right.
know what the cadence of all this is going to be.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we are what? Shit, dude. Fucking
What are you trying to think of?
how many years since 2008? 16. We're
16.
16 years into the MCU. We expect a crossover or two here and there. We're definitely not shocked by it. It's the Steph Curry thing where we've gotten so far into the MCU, we're shocked if there's not a crossover, not if there isn't,
Right.
not if there is one. It's like when Steph shoots a half court shot, we're almost all surprised when it doesn't go in,
Right.
But now when it does, it's like, of course it does because he's awesome. And that's
Yeah.
kind of where we're at with the MCU. We don't know what the cadence is going to be with James Gunn. We don't know
No.
what this is going to look like as far as crossovers. And it's so exciting. I'm hoping that I am able to kind of just turn my brain off of well, how is this going to lead to this and that and this, that, the other? I love the mapping. I love the road mapping of a universe. It's one of my favorite things. I've told you multiple times. There's few things more exciting than Kevin Feige standing in front of a blank screen. There are a
Yeah.
few
Right.
things more that get my blood pumping more than that, right? But I hope I am able to kind of enjoy this as it comes as far as the DCU. And I think Green Lanterns is such an awesome tool that they're using, something that the MCU and the DCEU never had. They never
Hmm.
had the series to supplement at the beginning of one of these universes.
Yeah.
And you look at, 2021 MCU on Disney Plus, hit after hit after hit after what if after hit. And I think like that is such a good showing of how good it can be. And then we got oversaturated. And then we kind of lost the plot. This, that, the other. This is they have everything to learn from here. Game of Thrones, Disney Plus, like you said, True Detective, other shows like that. I just think this is such an awesome opportunity for someone like James Gunn to build his universe his way. And
Yeah.
Kyle Chandler seems like the perfect fit to lead something like that. And I know James Gunn's not going to be one for one Kevin Feige as far as he puts his finishing touch on every single movie. That's what Kevin Feige did. He made sure that the crossover decisions were made correctly, and that's what made it work. James
Hmm.
Gunn obviously is going to do less of that because he's also directing. But I have to imagine James Gunn has input on the overall idea of every project. The idea for this show to
Absolutely.
start with two, start with a group, whittle it down to two, and then eventually get to one. That I imagine that's a top down decision. I think
Hmm.
it's the right one because it's a complex thing. We need to care about it. So give it to us up front so we can start to care about it right away, as opposed to you gotta like the character first, and then you gotta care about this ring, and then you gotta care about the Green Lantern Corps on top of it. Let's work
Yeah.
backwards.
I think it'll be cool to see on that last point. Like, it'll be cool to see how the ring and how being a Green Lantern works in being this space cop. That True Detective gets said so much when it comes to this series. True Detective is a very, very dark show, especially just thinking of True Detectives. I've only seen this first season. A great season of television. Fantastic. Very dark. How dark is this going to get? Because James Gunn has made it a point, a clear point with this universe that each project can have a different genre and tone entirely, and like he's proud of that. He wants that to be the case. And that I think will make it interesting in terms of like how do they cross over and connect, when projects can have such a starkly different tone. I mean, this Lanterns project is being, you know, described as gritty and dark, this earthbound murder, like what's going on here? But what they keep teasing and talking of the top down of it all, it's not only like the maybe passing of the ring, passing of the torch, but also the larger implications. And back in January 31st of 2023, when he initially talked about this Lantern series, James Gunn teased how there is something greater that they're finding that is going to affect the greater DCU. And I think that's awesome, man. Like, I feel like that's such a cool way of maybe introducing something that could lead to a Justice League or just, whatever we're building towards in this like chapter one, quote unquote. And in general, it's my second, I would say second highest anticipated DC project, right? Or DCU project, outside of like the Batman stuff. Like Superman, then this. I mean, I think this just sounds awesome, right up my alley, and something where it hits the requirements of like being different, being gritty, being interesting, and also pushing the narrative of the greater universe forward. Like that just sounds so awesome and just like so unique that the creatives behind it. I think getting Tom King to be a part of this is really cool. Like
Huge.
James Gunn's gotten quite the team together. Kind of like his writer's room, like assembling and kind of like mapping out the entire universe. There's so much potential for this new DCU. It's just going to be all about execution, man. And it starts with Creature Commandos a little bit. We'll see how much we enjoy that. Superman's the big test of it all. Obviously, that's going to that Superman almost more and more after when there are more and more announcements about DC projects coming up connected to this universe, more and more pressure is added to Superman because it really does ride on its shoulders, man. Like if it's bad and flops, it's a disaster. Like it really is. And I have so much faith it's going to do well and at least at the very least be a crowd pleasing movie. But man, it's just it's crazy because we're just sitting here, like you said, it's a brand, we're starting anew, and we just have to sit here and wait. We can get excited. I'm super excited about everything. But it's all about waiting and seeing how it actually, comes to be.
I feel like this first trailer is for Superman, that is going to be such a big moment for what this DCU is going to be. It's going to be our first look at what sort of intangible, process this is going to look like. And it's so different than every other movie universe because we're all so familiar with what a comic book movie universe can be, not just in the good way. We've seen the MCU be great. We've seen some X-Men movies be great. We've seen some bad comic book movie universes too. So I feel
Absolutely.
like our patience for it is lesser, but our anticipation is much higher as well. But also James Gunn, 4 for 4. It's hard to believe he's not going to make something awesome because he's
Trust and
yet
gun,
to
man.
not do it, in my opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, that is everything you need to know about the Lanterns and Kyle Chandler. It's interesting. I said at the top, Kyle Chandler is one of those guys that you recognize but don't really know a lot about. This conversation really just wrapped that around because we talked about it for 5 minutes, then we just talked about the show.
Yeah,
But
exactly. We haven't
but
even talked about it though, because it's like I think this is probably the first like official major pieces of like news coming from this series.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm excited that the ball's rolling, like you said. You know what I
Balls
mean? We're
rolling.
we're we're making moves. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to check out our latest video on the Thunderbolts trailer drop. Make sure to check out the direct podcast on Mondays and Thursdays right now because we are reviewing Agatha all along. Subscribe to this YouTube page. Subscribe to the direct podcast everywhere. Follow David Thompson on Twitter. David Thompson with 2 A's and David Thompson
That's
and
me.
me, Matt Roembke, Roembke. For David, I'm Matt. Until then, see you next time.